now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice. You're now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands. Miracle Brokers is back. That's right. We're fully reopened and back to work. Our agents are here to serve you with all of your packing and shipping needs. Need to move? Don't worry. Give us a call today. Collect a package, shipping around the world, or straight to Cayman? You got it. Give us a call on 949-5989. Collection by personalized appointment only, where our dedicated agents are on standby to personally assist you. Don't forget to wear your mask, maintain social distancing, and one person per appointment. Check us out at miraclebrokers.com today. Cayman Marl Road is celebrating its 3rd anniversary on June 29th. In 3 short years, CMR has become a household name and a trailblazer in news and content creation for the Cayman Islands. Taken on the historical name of the Marl Road, CMR has brought it into the 21st century, adding the elements of speed for news that's accessible to everyone. Celebrate with us. Contact sales at caymanmarlroad.com to participate in our anniversary supplement booklet and promote your business at the same time. Special features to include the history of the Marl Road.
Okay, good morning, folks, and welcome to another segment of the Cold Hard Truth. Happy Monday. How are you guys? I'm looking a little crazy with the purple lipstick today. Sometimes you got to shake things up a little bit. So good morning to Mitzi. Good morning, Bonnie. Good morning, Maureen. Good morning, Barbara. I see I forgot my water. So at some point, I'm going to pause this and grab me some water. We'll see how far we can get without water. Water is essential, folks. Good morning, Evelyn. How are you guys doing? Just checking a few messages here. So lots going on as usual around the world, and definitely some things going on here in the Cayman Islands that we want to touch on this morning. I think it's really imperative to obviously discuss the violent incident that occurred on the weekend. It would be, amiss of us to just cover that up and have nothing to say about that. But I can see already that I'm going to need my water. Jake, good morning to you. So give me one quick second. I'm going to run for my water break. Let me just mute my mic. And Cecile is joining. So let me grab some water and I'll be right back. Hold on one second, folks. There we go. All right, folks, I am back. Thank you so much for hanging in. Needed to grab my water to start to hydrate for the morning. Listen, folks, water is really important. I'm actually going to grab some oil here as well while I'm at it. I am one of those people who I really need to be drinking way more water than I do. And I know it. My skin tells me more water. Everything tells me more water. I have very dry skin. So I literally hydrate with oil. Like it's crazy, but I have to pour like straight oil. I actually use sometimes just cocoa butter oil with vitamin C in it. I think that's all this one has. And this has like a just a light scent. So it's very, very light. And I hydrate with that because like coming out of the shower within half an hour, my skin is super dry. So hydration is really important. You guys know that we live in the tropics. So it's hot out there. And not only is it hot out there, but that sucks the moisture out of you, literally. And so you got to remember to hydrate as much as possible. Now, I'm also a person who likes cold water. So I'm always drinking, which is not good for my throat, as you can see. One of the things that the doctor said to me with like allergies and stuff is stop drinking cold water. And I'm just like, for me, that would mean almost to stop drinking water. Like seriously, drinking room temperature water is really difficult for me. So good morning, Paulette. Thank you guys so much. Corrine, thank you. We're coming up on our anniversary week. Actually today, thank you for Corrine for pointing that out. Today is literally our anniversary, but we're going to spend some time tomorrow, which is Tuesday, celebrating in both the morning and the evening segment. So yes, thank you, Corrine, so much for that. We appreciate it. Where did the 3 years go? It's like life, boom. It goes by so incredibly fast. So we are going to spend some time this morning talking about this weekend incident. I feel so bad even having to talk about this, but it happened. And so I think at the end of the day, we're going to have that discussion. You know, as unfortunate as it is, we had a very violent incident happen over the weekend. So let's jump into it. I mean, let's just have the conversation. I'm just trying to pull up the article here, and then I'm going to share a few bits and pieces of information with you guys in terms of what is alleged to have transpired. Now, let me preface my comments. Thank you so much, Tasha, wishing us a happy anniversary. What I would say, first of all, is we don't know what happened. I wasn't there, you weren't there, none of us were there. And of course, we often have these conversations in the context of we think we know what happened and we don't know what happened. We were not there. We have heard bits and pieces of information. And as it goes, when you're thinking about even the concept of the Mile Road and how these things work, oftentimes there is an element of truth to what you hear. So it would be very dismissive of me to say that these rumors that we have heard over the weekend from Friday onwards after this incident happened have absolutely no merit to them. There are times when people just make stuff up, and I'm more than well aware of that. And they may have an ulterior motive for making things up. So, none of us live in that household, just like nobody lives in my household, nobody lives in your household except the people who live there. And so there can be, some level of speculation in terms of what happens with people. Not only is there often some level of speculation, but sometimes one person may be pushing a particular narrative. And that narrative may or may not be the full or accurate picture, or sometimes it's not even the truth. There are people who lie about what goes on in their households every single day. There are people who are subjected to domestic violence, for example. And when you talk to them and you see how they, discuss their homes, you would be shocked to know what is actually happening in their household. And in fact, so much so because they put on such a facade and such a front that it would take you back if the real truth ever comes out. And I think a lot of people That's why when details come out after an incident, people are like, well, that can't possibly be true because this person has always put on a certain picture, or the mother always is like this, or the father's like this, or like that. And so I think the bottom line really is you cannot say definitively what has happened in anyone's household. Sorry. My gosh. That frog. Thank you. You cannot say definitively in anyone's household what a position is, or what is actually going on unless you live in that household, or unless you've seen things for yourself. However, having said that, Cayman being, what it is, I think that a lot of times, especially when you have children talk, young adults talk, and there are things that leak out of households in terms of the dynamics, at least from their perspective of what's going on. Is their perspective always 100% accurate? No. But I think if you have a child, and again, my comments are not going to be specific really to this family because I don't know what their exact situation is. I will tell you what we've heard, and then you can certainly take it from there in terms of making your own determination. But when you have a child that may be a troubled young person and has issues, and they are, discussing those issues amongst their peers, normally it's a cry for help of some sort. So you could have two possible things going on when a child is engaging in information and putting information out about their household. Either that child really needs some serious psychological attention, and their viewpoint of what's happening in the household may be skewed, but nonetheless, from their perspective, something is wrong. Something isn't right. They're not happy. They're struggling with some sort of issues in their own household. And I think that that cry for help can be manifested in a lot of different ways. And so people need to pay attention when children, I think, are telling you something. There's no sense in trying to pretend that this isn't happening. Or this child is just a straight up liar. Yes, children lie. We all know that there are times that they can tell untruths, or they can, embellish stories, for lack of a better word. But even the act of embellishing a story, even that speaks volumes to the fact that something is wrong in your home. So, if you've ever encountered a child who has gone out there and had these discussions, telling people that this is happening or that's happening in their household, and then when you hear it back, you're like, well, that's not really what's happening in my household. You still need to find out why your child is feeling that way. I find it highly unusual that children are just going to completely fabricate and make up stories about what's happening in their homes if there's not something that is triggering them emotionally to even feel like they need to tell people outside of their homes about anything that's happening. Because, there is a sense of embarrassment when you live in a dysfunctional house and those things are going on. And, maybe your friends are starting to open up and talk about what's happening in their lives. And your kids will share. If they live in a dysfunctional home, you better believe that they're sharing that with someone. It may not be the right person. It may not be the professional that they need help from. But this is how information gets out of our homes. A lot of times we talk it. Sometimes we're feeling stressed and we might have a moment where we are saying, oh gosh, I don't know what's going on here. And, this is sort of my thought process about trying to process what's happening in your home. So people have reached out to us, older people, meaning adults. Like the very first call that I got about this incident after the young man went live. So for those of you who are not aware of what's happening, there was a stabbing on Friday night in the district of Northside. And that young man is said to be living in an abusive home. Now, like I said, we're not in a position to confirm or deny that. All I can tell you is people are saying it. The first person that called, who's actually a parent reached out and said, listen, I have children his age, or I have a child his age. And apparently, he had been saying things and sharing things outside of his household, in relation to, what was happening. And he expressed views that he was in some sort of an abusive relationship. Now, children, I think, can process things very, very differently. And if this young man is already stressed, if he's having psychological or emotional issues, and then someone tries to beat him or whoop him or whatever Caribbean people want to call this, physical engagement that we have with our children, which we justify at every single level. And I'm going to tell you straight up right now, my personal opinion is we do way more harm to our children than good when we decide to engage in physical contact with them in that way. And I don't care how old your child is. I don't care if they're a month up to 50 years old. Caribbean people have this mentality. We always have had this mentality. I'm a Caribbean woman. I grew up in a Caribbean household. And it is just like, listen, if you don't behave and you don't listen to me, the recourse will be that you're going to get an ass whooping. And that ass whooping is going to be what will make you a better person. Listen, I've been there. I've had my fair share of ass whoopings. And we are very, very firm in our belief that this will resolve our problems. I personally used to share that opinion, and I have matured in my lifetime, and I now share an opinion that we are doing more harm than good to our children and to our families. And I will have this discussion, I think, in more depth at another time. But what I will say is, we have taken on the mentality of our slave owners, that if you do not do something I want you to do, obviously I don't have the capacity to convince you that it's a good idea that you should do X, Y, Z. So the alternative is to simply put, beat you into submission. And we justify it every way that we possibly can. We talk about what the Bible says, because listen, the Bible is our go-to spot when we want to justify actions that are questionable. So when we want to talk about, slavery, the Bible is used to justify slavery. The Bible is used to justify having multiple wives. The Bible is used to justify beating our children. We always say, spare the rod and spoil the child. And so there's a whole discourse around the way in which Caribbean children raise their children, in more ways than one, but certainly beating our children is one of the things that by and large Caribbean people believe in doing. Now, I am, like I have just said, I am not a believer in this anymore. There was a time that I used to. And the reason why I used to believe that, I'm actually looking for a voice note here in case you're wondering what I'm doing in the background. So I do want to share something I think that's pertinent to this case as well. The reasons why I believed that, quite frankly, was simply because I grew up in a household where I was told this is what it's going to be. And yes, you will get your ass beat, quite frankly. And we're doing this because we love you. Yeah. And so when you grow up and other people harm you in any way, and they say to you, well, I'm doing this because I love you. Well, doesn't that make sense? It makes perfect sense because let me think about it. My parents love me. My elderly aunt who raised me loved me. And she used to beat me. So when you're in an adult relationship, or even as a teenager, teens get into these relationships, and a man says to them, I love you, but then a man hits them and beats them. Well, what could possibly be wrong with that? It's like you justify in your head that this must be okay. And I have said countless times that we set our children up for failures in life because of this attitude that we have which is basically, if someone does it in the name of love, it is somehow okay. So if someone hits you and then they come back and say, I'm sorry, I really do love you. If someone sexually molests your children, they're doing that under the guise or under the auspices of, I actually love you, I actually care about you. And, I think we miss the point when we do not appreciate that we, in part, have set up our children to be victims because we have said in very clear terms, I can love you and I can still physically harm you. And those things are very, very contradictory because let's be quite frank and honest here. I wouldn't beat my own dog, right? So when I think about the fact that I love my little dog, you guys know I have my little dog named Coco, and I love Coco to pieces, okay? How is it then that I can say that I love her, but I would never in a million years hit Coco, harm Coco? To me, that's unthinkable that I would do such a thing. So if it's unthinkable that I would do such a thing for or to a dog, how do I in my head justify beating a child? You know what I'm saying? It's like, to me, I find it so strange and so contradictory. The more I thought about it over the years, the more I heard, commentary, the more I read about corporal punishment, the more I looked at the statistics. We're one of the most violent societies in the world, the Caribbean and Latin America, but yet we beat our children more than anybody else. And we always want to be quick to point to very isolated cases like, okay, you don't see any Black children going and shooting up schools. So that is proof. We use these anecdotal stories. Well, that's proof that we're doing it right. We're not doing it right. Look at Chicago. Look at any major US city in the world, right? And yes, Black Americans still beat the shit out of their children. So don't come to me with, oh, they're not beating their children, blah, blah, blah. They're doing it just as much as Caribbean people. They have more violence in their homes, in their communities. There's more Black and Black crime and Black violence than anything else. So yes, you might have a white kid who's going to go shoot up a school and kill 50 kids. But when you still pull out the numbers of percentages of how many kids he killed in that one incident, how many school shootings you've had, yes, we get that those are all troubled white kids. But they're not troubled white kids who go around shooting up the place because their parents haven't beaten them. Because by comparison, we have our African American families or Caribbean families who are entrenched in corporal punishment. And the numbers do not add up. The numbers show we have more persons incarcerated. The numbers show that of the vast majority of people who are actually incarcerated, when you talk to those children, they all are, as adults, they all grew up in homes that believed in corporal punishment. So they all grew up in homes that they got their ass whooped. So how much did it really help? And then there's evidence, unequivocal evidence. People want to argue with it. They can argue with it all they want. But there's unequivocal evidence that has come out that has said, listen, your children are impacted negatively when you engage in physical contact with them, when you beat them. And not only that, but parents by and large do not have the capacity to even have conversations with their children. We don't know how to talk to them in a meaningful way, to assist them, to hear them, to get them to open up to us, like none of that. So this incident on Friday made me start to think about how dysfunctional our families are at all levels. And I think it's important for us to start addressing some of these issues with a view to healing our communities. We come from environments where, like I said, we're growing up in homes where we are subjected to seeing abuse, and somehow we think that that's normal, right? And then it goes from one generation to the next. So you were beaten as a kid, people hit you. I mean, some of us, listen, Cameron, switch, boards, broomsticks. I mean, I've known of people who've gotten broomsticks broken on them. They've had bruises all over them. Their backside got bruised up. Explain to me, how is that any different than what slave owners used to do to us, where they would put how many lashes on our backs? And the reason why they wanted those scars there is because that was a permanent reminder to you Every time you saw a scar, that you better remember that the next time you think about doing something that I don't like, you're going to get another lashing. And that's really what corporal punishment is all about. And that's the exact same message that we're sending our children. And then we expect our children to go to school and behave themselves. If someone says something to them that they don't like, you can't kick your schoolmate. You can't hit your schoolmate. You can't slap them. You can't beat them with a broomstick. Well, why not? Why can't I do any of those things? Because we do that in my household. So you see the message that we are sending to our children? If you do something in your household and that becomes your normal, why would you think that when your children go out there and they engage in that same violent behavior, because they've translated that to, listen, when I say something to someone, I tell a kid, pick up your toys, and they don't pick up their toys, the only option I have available to me after I've said it or after I've yelled at them or whatever is to grab you by the ear, twist you, force you down on the ground, tell you to pick your toys up, beat you, all these things. We are some of the least creative parents in the world. And that lack of parenting knowledge and lack of creativity is what I sometimes call it, has frankly led to us being, some of the most dysfunctional families in the world as well. None of that is required to raise your children. I'm telling you, it isn't. And every single day as a parent of a toddler, I struggle with this because, again, I grew up in that environment where that was my go-to spot. And one of the reasons I waited so long in life to have a child is I felt like I needed to be not just financially secure and all these other things that we talk about, but emotionally, I needed to be balanced. And I needed to understand children and how to deal with children and how to help children, right? A child of my own. So when my child does something, the first instinct is to yell at them, and you've got to pull it back, take a moment, and understand, what is this going to accomplish? I mean, I've sat as a facilitator, as a trainer in environments training adults about conflict resolution. How do you resolve conflict? I think I mentioned to you guys before this whole lesson of the fist, right? So the lesson of the fist is the more you try to force someone to do something, the more they will resist. So the more you tell someone, you've got to do this, and I'm going to pull up the video. I think some months ago I was looking for it, and I'm going to pull it up and share it with you guys. But the more you try to tell someone, this is what you need to do. So you're interlocked like this. You pull this way, they pull this way. This is a natural reaction for human beings. So the more you tell your kid, you can't do X, Y, Z, the more they're going to want to do it. So you need to find a way to communicate with them, not just saying, no, you can't do this, because that creates this interlocking situation where you're pulling, they're pulling, and you get absolutely nowhere. You need to be prepared, even at the youngest of ages, to sit down and engage in conversation with them. It is easy to yell. It is easy to hit. It is easy to do all of these things that we do. That is the easy way out. How many of us have taken the time as parents to take a course, to read up on how to become good parents? Look at alternative disciplining methods, right? So like I said, if I can sit down and talk to adults about conflict resolution and what doesn't work and what does work and what they need to be engaging and what they need to be doing, how is it possible then that I can sit down with a child and not try to engage in some of those same constructive mechanisms that I am teaching adults? And this is how I started to really reevaluate my thought process. And why do I think that beating a child is okay? I only think that because that's what I was taught. That's what my aunt taught me. That's what my society taught me. And we have to be prepared to question our society and to question some of the things that we grew up believing are okay, because they're not okay. By and large, we teach children that they have no control over their bodies. That if an adult says that you need to do something, you do it without questioning them. We teach our children that they don't have a voice. And so when they become adults and they're in the workplace and their employers tell them that they don't have a voice, all of a sudden, as adults, we're like, oh, yes, I do. Well, where did you get this voice from? Do you only get a voice when you turn 18? Is that right? Is that the logical way that we should be thinking about life? Absolutely not. Even a toddler has a voice. A baby has a voice. When you hear a baby crying, they are trying to express to you that something is wrong. They need something. And we need to start listening as adults more to what our children are saying. We need to engage them in conversations with a view to helping them heal whatever is wrong with them. Now, listen, we create situations that our children are then forced to live through, whether it's broken homes, abusive situations, whatever, right? And as a result of what those children then have to live through, their personalities and their own lives are formed and shaped in one way or another. And we are obviously not doing a very good job when you look at how many people are locked up in Northward, how many wannabe gangbangers we have, how many young teenage mothers we have that are out there looking for love in any way that they can get it. And if that means being sexually promiscuous, they're out there doing that, right? So let us be frank and honest when we say that as a community, by and large, we are failing our children. We're not doing a good job at this. And start to address some of those failings. Stop blaming the children for everything. Like, I've never seen a group of people who are so quick to blame our children. Oh, that child is a demon child, I've heard people say. That child is a bad spawn. How do you raise a child that becomes a demon child? How do you contribute to that? Because I don't believe that by and large, now I know clinically what I'm saying is not 100% accurate, but the vast majority of children are not born having a predisposition to violence or being a demon child or anything else. They are born with a relatively clean slate. There are some things genetically that can make your child, and there's evidence to this. It was really interesting that I was actually watching a TV series over the weekend about this. In non-clinical terms, they call it the murder gene. So there is some evidence that some children are born with psychotic tendencies. But what releases those psychotic tendencies is the environment in which they're exposed to. So if you take a child who is brought up in a loving, balanced environment where they're given the opportunity to be heard and listened to, and they're nurtured properly, the chances of that person then engaging in sociopathic behavior is very slim to none. However, when you take a child that, yes, may have those predispositions, and on top of that, you subject them to violence in the home, you know, violence, whether they're experiencing it themselves or seeing it against a parent in a household, being talked down to. Because listen, you don't just destroy your children by beating them with a weapon, whether that weapon is your hand or a broomstick. You can destroy them by the words that you use and how you communicate with them. So every single time your child does something wrong in your eyes, you say to them, oh, you're just like your father, or you're just like your mother. You're no good. What do you think you're doing to that child? You are destroying that child and not building them up. You are creating a recipe for disaster in that child. Because that child will then go out into the world looking for acceptance, looking for love, in any way that they can get it. And you know who's going to give them acceptance and love? Their friends at school who are too young and don't understand life themselves. So they're going to start engaging in, I need to be around people who make me feel good. I'm not getting that in my household. So therefore, I'm going to hang out with this set of other dysfunctional kids who are also not getting it in their household. At least we can relate. That's how gangs are formed. That's like the very basis. This need to fulfill something that is so much deeper, this belonging, to be accepted by people unconditionally. Unfortunately, those are not conducive environments for your kids to be in. But those people are more than happy to take them in because they can run drugs for them, they can involve in sexual activity, they can involve in bullying other children. They create a family of their own with their friends. Young girls who are being told that they're no good, they're this, they're that, they're going to go out there and get into the arms of a young man who, again, is only looking to use them for sexual pleasure. But somebody loves me. Someone wants me. My mother didn't want me. My father didn't want me. But here's someone who's willing to take me under their wing. Child molestation is a big issue in this community. And it continues to be an issue because, again, we degrade our children, we send them the wrong messages, and then here comes along a child molester who's going to make them feel good. Or you're so pretty, right? They start grooming your children. You're beautiful. I want to be there for you. I will always be there for you. All of these things, the child molester knows how to say and what to say to try to make your children feel good because they're not getting that self-esteem building in their homes and in their home environments. So that is one issue I find that is happening family after family after family. And it is quite unfortunate because at the end of the day, we are creating what we then turn around and talk about as monsters. It's kind of like the Frankenstein story. Dr. whatever his name was in Frankenstein created this monster. He sewed the bits and pieces together. And then after the thing turns out to be a monster, we all sit back and go, oh my God, what happened? What happened is, as parents, we ourselves need help. Because most of us come from dysfunctional homes and dysfunctional environments where we don't know how to parent. And if we're not reaching out to professionals, asking for advice, and this is where elected officials, in my opinion, have a much greater role to play, but 90% of them are dysfunctional too. I don't know why Alexa is trying to talk to me, but I'm not talking to her right now. She's like, I'm not sure about that, but I didn't call her name. Okay, that was like really weird. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, we're growing up in, dysfunctional homes ourselves. So a lot of times we're not in a position to help our own children because we don't know any better. I'm a firm believer that if the vast majority of people know better, they would do better. But most of us simply do not know. And we are afraid to ask for help. We're afraid to have these conversations. Our political arm, like I said, a lot of them are also coming from dysfunctional homes that they haven't really resolved themselves. And so, they should be creating through social programs, through DCFS, ongoing parenting classes. You're getting ready to have a baby. They're going to say, okay, at the hospital, you can take a CPR course. We're going to show you how to bathe your baby at least once before you leave the hospital. We're going to show you how to change a diaper and the importance of changing a diaper and wiping your baby properly. So we get very rudimentary things, right? You can do CPR training. You can do a first aid training course. Where are the parenting courses that tell me or any other parent out there how to discipline your children? Where are the parenting courses on how to have a conversation with your teenage child? Why are we not having those types of classes? Why are we not having free medical health seminars that deal with, if you grew up in a dysfunctional home, here is what you need to do? Part of the reason why we don't have these courses available to us or, these resources available is that we all live in a very stigmatized community. So we live in a community where mental health issues are looked down upon, where we don't want to discuss if we are bipolar or if we have psychological issues of any kind. We think that these things are some sort of a curse. And so when we struggle with depression, we suffer from, being bipolar, or even worse, because there's a lot of things that are worse than being bipolar. We're not willing to share with people that this is it. Instead, we are keen to hide it. And even with our children, when our children are out there doing things that are clear calls for help, instead of sending them to counseling and getting them the help that they need, we think, oh my God, if anybody knows that my child is going to counseling, this is going to be a problem. They're going to stigmatize me as a parent. What have I done wrong? They're going to stigmatize my child. We're looking at it the wrong way. You know, when I lived in the States, there were resources available to us as children. We even had a program called peer counseling in our schools. And I was a peer counselor, and other kids, like they would pick children who they felt were mature enough to have conversations and to kind of almost be like peer guidance counselors, right? Peer counselors. And we would have sessions where you'd meet one-on-one, and kids could sign up for this and they could sit down and talk to you, talk about their problems. Of course, confidentiality was something that had to be respected. But what you taught children is that, number one, there are other children who can listen to you and who can help you and who can give you advice. Now, if it was something extremely serious where a young person was thinking about, suicide or something like that, that had to be escalated to an adult. But oftentimes, because we grew up in homes, because we grew up in environments where we never had meaningful conversations with adults, the only people we know how to talk to are our peers. And so through a peer counseling program, you can facilitate, as schools, as a government, you can facilitate those environments in which children are able to talk to each other, but in a more meaningful way, and talk to people who are more equipped to assist them. So of course the peer counselors got training. There were so many programs like this available to me in public schools, I should mention, because I'm not a rich kid. I didn't come from a rich family. I grew up poor. I didn't have the benefit of going to private school in the US, but yet these programs are still made available through their schools, through their social services, working through the government school system. Where are those types of programs in the Cayman Islands? They're nowhere to be found. There was even a teen court program where you had an integration between kids and the schools, and then what was happening with first-time offenders in the courthouse. Where are those types of programs in the Cayman Islands? Why are we not focusing? We talk about how rich we are and how much of a surplus we have. Why are we not focusing more on those social programs? We want to address issues after they've happened, after they've been created. So a teenager gets pregnant. We have the Young Parents Program. What about trying to prevent that teen pregnancy? What programs do we have in place to address that? What programs do we have in place to teach parents how to communicate with your children? So you don't have to raise your voice with your child to have a meaningful conversation or to discipline them. Listen, we're all grown-ups here. So let me be quite frank with you, because this is the cold hard truth, and we don't do it any other way. If I'm having a conversation with you and you and I are in a heated discussion, you start raising your voice, that causes me to start raising my voice. Who do you think is actually listening? Are you really listening to me when you're yelling, you're screaming, I want you to listen to me? No, what is happening here as it continues to escalate? Through that escalation process, your hearing goes down. Your level of understanding goes down, right? You are in an emotive state. And that's why one of the worst things you can do in a moment of conflict is to engage with that person, with the yelling and the screaming and whatever. What you need to do, oftentimes, is remain silent. Have you ever noticed that when you are silent, people listen to you? You're not saying anything, but they're like, hello? Even if you're on the phone and you're silent. People curse and rant and rave and, hello? Are you there? Yes, I'm here. And I'm listening to you. I am hearing and understanding every word you have to say. Take that in the context of a child. Let's go with the most basic example. You have a toddler who's having a moment. And listen, they can have some moments. They're having a meltdown. They're yelling and screaming. They're crying, and half the time you don't even know what the heck is going on. What are they crying about? What's the issue? What's happening right now? And the thing you need to do is to practice remaining silent and controlled. You screaming, you yelling only adds confusion and continues to escalate the already dramatic situation. And you get nowhere. The worst time for you to discipline your child is when you're upset. Your child isn't going to listen because they're upset in the moment. That's why timeouts are meant to sometimes just be a moment for the child to calm down and for you to calm down and gain perspective on what's going on. Take a timeout. Everybody needs a timeout. Sometimes adults need timeout. Go to your corner. I'll go to mine. Once we have calmed down, we come back and we discuss what just transpired. That's what children need. Children need a level of calmness in their lives, security. And we start from the youngest because people have this idea in their head, I can allow my child to have no structures, no discipline, no rules, no boundaries, nothing. And then when they're 12 and 13 years old, I'm going to start telling them what they've been doing their entire lives thus far is wrong. And you no longer can do it. You no longer can talk to mommy that way. You can't hit your brother. You can't do this. You can't do that. So after 12, 13, 14 years of doing whatever the heck you wanted, all of a sudden there's going to be an adult who's going to tell you, oh, by the way, there are actually rules in life. So as parents, once again, we have failed. If you don't start teaching your children from day one that there are rules in life, that we all have to follow, and there's certain things that you cannot do, you think, oh, this behavior is cute. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been out places, the salon, the wherever, and kids doing things that you're like, and the parent laughs it off. The parent thinks it's cute. And then you see how that behavior develops to something else in the teenage years and later on in life. Parents, get the help that you need, even if it's not for your own sake, because a lot of us are dealing with childhood traumas. We're dealing with dysfunctionalities of our own. Do it for your children. Learn how to break the cycle of violence, of dysfunctionality, of, everything wrong, the lack of communication, everything that we've been doing wrong in our families. Learn how to break that cycle for the benefit of your own children and our future generations here in the Cayman Islands. I'm begging you to please, we all have to make a conscious effort on an individual level to start to turn this around. Because what do we see happening? Where in the world do we think it's normal for a child to turn against family members? The very people in their own families, the very people that they should be the closest to. They're turning against those persons with a degree of violence that is shocking and unheard of. It happens all over the world, but I'm telling you, it shouldn't be happening. And it should definitely not be happening in our homes. So there's that, right? There are parents who need to learn how to communicate better. There are parents who need to do parenting courses. Politicians need to get on the bandwagon of making sure that those resources are available. Every single politician in this community should have town hall meetings where children are given the opportunity and parents are given the opportunity to go to these sessions and learn new skills. There should be an ongoing thing that is available. Destigmatize it. Take the stigma away from mental health by talking about it over and over and over again. Understand that beating your children isn't the answer. There's so many more options available to you in terms of being there for your children and communicating openly with them. Now, I want to talk about something very, very interesting. I do want to read some of your comments. I know I've been speaking for a minute here. Lita says people should be careful of assuming. I don't know why my comments are not loading. Hold on a second. There we go. Good morning to Morna. Cheyenne says, I agree because none of us know the situation. Happy anniversary. Thank you, Aline. Good morning, Dominique. Rosanna says beating don't help. And Rosanna is a young person. I'm glad that she is saying that because I know it doesn't help. And like I said, I got my fair share. Elizabeth, good morning to you. Alice says the Bible also says that parents should not provoke their children to wrath. Now, listen to me. The Bible says a lot of things, and the Bible can be a source of wisdom, and it certainly depends on how you interpret it. Just like the Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. Everybody interprets that to mean that you should beat your children. Tell me where in the world do you see, because remember the Bible wasn't written in English, first of all. So you had people who would have been translating the Bible. There are books of the Bible that are missing, that don't even exist. So we could have a totally separate conversation about the accuracy of the Bible and how it was translated, why it was translated in a particular way, because trust me, back then it was being translated by people with money. And there are certain things that they wanted translated a particular way, whether it had that meaning or not. So I know that as a Christian society, we've been taught to not question anything that's in the Bible and to just be fully accepting of what the Bible says. But when you understand the history of the Bible and even how it came about, you would know that that would be a very foolish position for you to take. However, despite that, I'm willing to accept that the Bible has a lot of very good proverbs and good lessons in it that do make a lot of good sense. However, we choose to interpret things how we want to interpret it. So when the Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child, we use that as a justification for why we're allowed to beat our children. Show me that analogy which speaks to a shepherd and a sheep. So the shepherd is responsible for looking over his flock and looking over his sheep. Where have you ever seen a shepherd beat his sheep with a rod? I'll wait for somebody to tell me where this happens. That's not how sheep herding happens. The rod, as well as other things. So a shepherd doesn't use just a rod to steer his sheep. That is but one mechanism. In fact, the shepherd also uses dogs to come in who are trained to guide the sheep on the path that they're trying to go, to try to keep the sheep safe. So the dog not only is used as an instrument to guide the sheep, but also he's there for protection. So when the wolves come from the outside, the dogs are there to offer some measure of protection for the sheep. And the rod is a gentle rod of correction. It is not a rod meant for beating anybody, and definitely not the shepherd sheep. The rod is meant to tap, tap, move you in this direction. Have you guys ever watched, I try to break down and make analogies as simple as I possibly can. Have you guys ever watched Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer? He's like my favorite guy when it comes to training dogs. And Cesar, I used to watch him back in the day when he had his show. Like I watched him religiously. And I always used to say, before I started watching Cesar, I had a dog named Oscar. And Oscar was a little bit of a troubled dog. Like he prepared me for motherhood because Oscar had some issues. He was predisposed to some bad behavior. And, I would see it even as a puppy. Like Oscar would do things that I'd be like, Oscar, this isn't normal. Like, why are you doing this? Like, he's the type of dog that if you pissed him off, he would come and pee on your foot. And he actually did that as a puppy. Like, he was really smart. He was potty trained with like no issues. Like, he was the easiest dog that I've ever had to be potty trained. And yet, if you pissed him off, he was also the type of dog, like if you weren't giving him enough attention, he actually did this one time. I'll never forget in my apartment in Tampa, we were talking, nobody's paying him any mind. He's just going to come and pee right on your foot. And he did that throughout his entire life. If you're not paying him any mind or doing whatever, these are things that he would do. So he would engage in certain behaviors that I was like, what is up with this dog? Like, well into his adulthood, we were here in the Cayman Islands. Oscar goes to the beach. Now, Oscar knows he can run around the beach and have a good time. You take him to the bathroom before you take him to the beach. And then, sometimes we'd let them run a little bit. He's actually ran up to a man's towel and bag on the beach and pissed on them. Because that's the kind of dog that Oscar was. And so there were times that he engaged in behavior that was like really antisocial. And you're thinking, what is going on? Your natural instinct is to try to grab this dog. Oh my God, what are you doing? That isn't what the dog needed. And so when I started watching The Dog Whisperer back in the day, I was like, why didn't I have this show available to me before I had Oscar? Because there were so many mistakes that I made with him. You know, there were things that he was very afraid of, loud noises like fireworks and stuff like that. And so during those times, he would engage in very destructive behavior because he was so afraid of the sounds. So I remember one year, New Year's Eve, and of course everybody's shooting off fireworks during New Year's. I come home to discover that Oscar had put a hole in the bottom of my cabinet underneath the sink. So that was the only drawer that he could actually open up in the kitchen. So listen to this. The dog opened up the drawer and he was so afraid of the noise and the firecrackers or whatever. He started digging into like formica. And don't ask me how a dog can dig and actually create a hole through the formica, but that shows you the strength of this medium-sized dog, but more importantly, how afraid he was. He was trying to dig his way out of the apartment. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen, but he dug a hole into the formica. And so when I came home, I was like, what the hell happened to this place? So when people are afraid, whether it's an animal or a human being, we will do things and we will lash out and react in particular ways that other people who are not in that situation might look at it and go, this person's crazy. Oscar's crazy. What's going on here? But I used to listen to The Dog Whisperer, and he used to have some very sensible things to say about disciplining your pets. And after a while, I started thinking about the same things this man was saying about a dog equally applied to people. And not just people, but in particular children. So if you ever listen to what's his name again? Milan. He would say that for your dog, the most important thing that you can do is create boundaries, rules, and limitation. Structure. Because that is what your children, that is what your dog, I know some of us treat our dogs like children, trust me, I did. That is what Caesar Milan, that is what your children need. That is what your dogs, sorry, that is a Freudian slip. That is what your dogs need. Boundaries, rules, and limitation. But people need the exact same thing. And more importantly, children need this consistency in disciplining them. So if you love a child, you will discipline the child. You do not allow them to run amok. If you love your dog, you will discipline your dog. And these are like, I would hear Caesar talk about, okay, this is what you do with dogs. And I sit there and I go, those are the same rules that by and large apply to the rearing of children. And even how you deal with people. If you don't give people rules in a relationship or boundaries or limitations and create an environment of structure, children crave nothing more than structure. The most important thing you can do to a child is give them a world in which it is structured. Certainty. That is why right now with COVID-19, there are so many children that are struggling because their world has been turned upside down. Even if they lived in a dysfunctional world, now it's even more dysfunctional. It has been turned upside down. Everything has changed and very immediate, very rapid. And as human beings, we do not like change. We resist change. And it's difficult for us as adults to even keep up with change, much less children who have less experience and a lesser degree of understanding about the world. Create a safe, structured environment for your children. Every single day, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get up in the mornings. This is our routine. We're going to have breakfast as a family. We are going to sit down evening and have dinner as a family. During that dinner time, we're going to talk as a family. These are all things that I have had to learn in my lifetime that I'm trying to work on and I'm trying to implement. And I'm encouraging a lot of you to do likewise. Little small changes can go a long way. I want to talk about here in a minute. I'm going to read some of your comments, but I want to talk about the dysfunctional families from the perspective of broken homes and how we have all lived through that situation. So Morna, hi. Patrina says, no, sir, mom and dad, but a spouse. No, sir, that border's closed. Patrina, I'm not quite sure what you meant to say, but expound on that. I'm happy to. And remember, guys, you guys can call in 324-1612. Call us on WhatsApp. I know you guys like typing your messages, but if you want to engage in this conversation and let your viewpoints be heard, by all means, please call us in. So Morna says, happy anniversary, Cayman Mall Road. May God continue to bless you and keep up the good work that you're doing, keeping us updated on what's taking place here and around the world. Thank you so much, Morna. Anne says, very interesting topic. Thank you, Anne. Latoya says, Cayman, stay blessed. Jermaine, good morning. Nikisha and Debbie and Sue. Coracita, I think it's Coraceta, is all here for it. Miss Beulah, thank you so much. Summer reminds us that the Family Resource Center has some excellent workshops and pre-recorded webinars for parenting and positive discipline. Thank you for that, Summer. I always forget about the Family Resource Center, so I think the government needs to spend more resources reminding us that the Family Resource Center is there and what they have available. Put up billboards around the island. Parenting classes, Family Resource Center. Simple. I'm driving on the road. Oh, there's the phone number. During COVID-19, we get all these text messages from the police reminding us daily about, the curfew, and all of these things. Send out text messages about, here's a course that's available. Take advantage of this. Reach out to the Family Resource Center. Kilwani says there's something called the SNAP program. Never heard of it. Tell us more about it. We would love to know. Leslita says there are a few ways to situation. How about children who grew up in a loving home and love being a follower, especially in gangs? Now, good morning, Andine. Leslita, what I would have to say is this. No parent is perfect. And, we're not trying to hold parents to this unattainable, line. Like you can never attain this. It's not perfection that people are seeking. I do think that a lot of people think that they are raising children in a loving home. And because they are not communicating with their children or engaging with their children in any degree of dialogue, they still don't know what their children are experiencing or what their children are going through. So your perception may be that you've got a great home and it's a loving environment. And I'm not saying that that isn't the case, but a child's perspective or what they may be going through for different reasons can be very different. So let me give you an example. There are children who are growing up in loving homes that are still the product of sexual abuse from uncles, cousins. Sometimes it is, 25% of sexual abuse is actually committed. Child sexual abuse is actually committed by older teenagers. So your child might be being sexually abused by an older cousin, and you think, oh, they're always hanging out because your child enjoys their company. But during those times, your child might be subjected to things that you don't even know. So this is just one example where we think we are raising children in a perfectly happy, stable environment, and our children are enduring situations and going through things that we know nothing about. So the child is still struggling. The child still feels like they need an out. They need someone who will accept them. Is it possible to grow up in a quote unquote perfect home, perfect household, and still have a child that will go out there and get involved in things? Absolutely. But the vast majority of children who get involved in gang activities and get involved in these issues, when you really take a professional look at what's happening in the home, it wasn't as loving of a home as you think, or there's something dysfunctional that was happening in that household. Broken homes. I want to talk about this. Most of us as Caribbean people, and this was actually a sad situation over the weekend. I said to, on Father's Day, our regional correspondent in Jamaica, I said to her, I would love for you to do something on like fathers, like, something on fathers. What makes a great father, whatever. And she said to me, the first thing that came out of her mouth is like, well, most of us didn't grow up with fathers. So that's the Caribbean way. We didn't grow up with fathers in our households, or we grew up with having to share your dad with like 6 other kids in your school because your dad goes around with his little ding-a-ling all over the place. And so your dad barely has time for you because he's got 5, 6 other children out there that he's having to play father to. So how much time does a parent have for a child? And I'm not trying to make people feel bad who have 5, 6, even 10 children. Because back in the day, that's what we did. We didn't have anything else to do but to have children. And part of having that many children is some of them didn't survive. So if half of them survived, then you had a chance of the other half of the half that survived taking care of you into your older years. So there was a reason why people had the number of children that they had. They had to help with household chores. They had to tend the land and all this kind of stuff. In this day and age, why anyone would have that many children is beyond me. I don't understand it. Number one, you cannot afford it. You cannot have 10 children and know that your 10 children will grow up not needing for anything in life and have an opportunity to get an education. It is near impossible. So you put your children at a disadvantage for every single child that you have, every additional child that you have. This is just my opinion, folks. You feel differently? Let me know. You don't like it? So even in terms of time, let's break down your day. All right. You go to work, you get up in the morning. Most of us get up, say 6 o'clock in the morning. If you live in the Eastern districts, you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning because you're trying to beat traffic. So you get up super early, you wake your kids up, you force them to have a quick breakfast if they're lucky. A lot of kids going to school, no breakfast, trying to concentrate and focus on an empty stomach. You wake them up, let's go, we gotta go, everybody get in the car. Okay, so you got all your kids piled into the car, you start dropping the kids off. Maybe on the way to school, you have a conversation with your children. A lot of us have the radio on, we're calling our friend, in the phone, we're on the what? You drop your kids off to school, you go to work. Say you work 8:30 or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock until 5 or 6. Many people work longer hours than that, people working overtime, people may have 1 or 2 jobs. Your children get out of school at 3 o'clock. Where do they go at 3 o'clock? Are they going to a tutor? Most kids are going home. Maybe they have other siblings at home, hanging out with their friends. They might do a little bit of homework. By the time you get home, right, leaving your 5 o'clock job, again, if you get off exactly at 5 o'clock, you are then subjected to sitting in traffic. You're lucky if you get home 6:30, 7 o'clock. Then you've got to come home and maybe cook or prepare dinner. So that's going to take, if you're lucky, depends on what you're cooking, another hour to hour and a half. You encourage your children, get your homework done beforehand or by that time. Now we're looking at, it's probably 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. You should be spending individualized time with each one of your children. Even if you have 5, 6, 10, 20 children, individual time. Yes, you've got family time, you've got family activities, but each of your children is a person and they deserve your undivided attention away from other siblings. They deserve to be able to sit down with you and have a one-on-one personalized conversation. So you tell me, just looking at the average day, it's now 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. Where are you going to find the time to spend, even if it's just half an hour a day? Where will you find that individualized time to spend with a child? And it's compounded the more children that you have. So we end up raising children who don't have any meaningful conversations with us as adults. Of course, they're going to turn to their peers. Of course, they're going to turn to gangs. That's who they're spending most of their time with anyway. There are some serious questions, I think, that as a community, we are not really having this discourse. We're not having this dialogue. We're not breaking it down and thinking about, what does a loving home look like? We all use that term, but what is that? Are our children getting the individualized attention that they so desire and that they need? It is a need. There are those of us who grew up in households who've never had a meaningful conversation with a parent. It was always like, okay, you need this, you need that, and your parents don't know anything about your personality. You've never opened up to them about being scared or afraid. We're dismissive of each other when we start to talk about our emotions. When my 3-year-old, and she did this last week, we actually went to the salon the first day that we could go on Monday. Monday? Yes. And I was like, okay, mommy's going to go to the salon because my hair was a hot mess. And her hair isn't really a hot mess, but, she's got a different type of hair than me. And the lady at the salon does a very good job of braiding it and whatever. So I said to her, you're going to come to the salon with mommy. We're going to have a little salon date. And so when we went there, because she hasn't been in a little while, she's only 3 years old. She's going to be 4 in August. She says to me, when we walk in there, she's a little bit shy. And normally she's a very outgoing child, but outgoing children have their moments. They sometimes they're shy. Depends on who they're around. And you've got to listen to your children. So she says to me, mommy, I'm scared. And I'm just like, okay, what are you afraid of? What's making you scared? When a child tells you something, I'm afraid, I'm scared, engage them in the conversation. Why are you afraid? Tell me what's going on. Why do you feel this way? Don't just dismiss them. Oh, there's nothing to be afraid about. Don't worry about it. Why? She's like, I'm scared. I'm afraid. I said, why? Tell me, what's wrong? I don't know. Like, it's just different. I haven't been here. So now you go to an environment where you're seeing everybody wearing masks. This is one of her first outings since COVID-19. She's not been to the grocery store. We've taken her to Kimana Bay because that's an outdoor space. Not as many people are masked up. So now she's seeing people in a closed environment. Everybody's wearing masks. People are looking a little bit differently, wearing gloves, And she hasn't been to the salon in a minute. In 3 months, 3 months in the child of a 3-year-old, in the life of a 3-year-old, is a long time. You ever notice how children have such a misinterpretation of time? Like, she'll say something happened yesterday and it didn't happen yesterday. It happened like last week or way before. So in their heads, they don't have the same concept of time that we do as adults. So I had to reassure her after I heard, why are you afraid? Tell me what's going on in your head. after I listened to her, I could then appropriately respond to what she was saying to me. Now, how many as parents of us experienced that as a child? I know from my experiences, it would have been dismissed. My aunt, being as good of a person as she was, as good of a Christian lady as she was, would have been like, whatever. So even in high school, when you had certain anxieties or you were being bullied or teased by your peers, you never felt like you could go to your parents and talk to them. So, Leslita, I agree with you that family might appear to be loving, and that might be the household that everybody thinks that they have. But your children are struggling at so many different levels. So, Kilwani reminds us, and for those of us who never knew it, that the Family Resource Center offers free parenting classes through the SNAP program. Kilwani, we're going to reach out to the Family Resource Center and invite them on this program, because this isn't come once a year. This is every single month. You should be reaching people through the mediums that they have available. Everybody's on social media, right? Where are these free webinars being posted? Are they available on Facebook? Let me go look up the Family Resource Center right now, because I want to see how they are reaching the people. Now, I get it. The people need to help themselves. And a lot of times people do not know that resources are available. And I can tell you that if I don't know something's available, a lot of other people don't know that it's available. So here we are. They do have a social media page. Thank you so much to the Family Resource Center. And they do have, look at this, Parenting Through Separation and Divorce webinar starting on July the 9th. That's coming up. Thursday at 6 p.m. I'm going to reach out to the Family Resource Center because we all have a part to play. And I want to find out, where is this webinar going to be made available? And if it's going to be made available online and it's something that we can reshare, we will reshare it on our platforms. I want you guys to start paying attention and make it your business as a community, as a family, to start learning about these options. So here's another one. 4-week series, Parenting Through Separation and Divorce. Every single one of us needs this, starting July the 9th. I'm going to share this on my page. Okay, so it looks like they're doing it through Zoom. So you can join through a Zoom session. I didn't get a press release about this. This is the first I'm hearing about this. So I had to go on their Facebook page, but good, that's what we need to do. So I'm going to share that information with you guys. So look out for it on the page. I'm going to see how we can share the webinar and let us start learning as a community how to be better parents. One of the worst things that you can do to a child. This one is talking about separation and divorce. Like I said, a lot of us grew up in dysfunctional homes where there was never a parent, a father present anyway, because we might have been trying to steal somebody else's man and gotten pregnant. And then you find that you're trying to create a fake family that just doesn't exist. This happens a lot in Cayman, trust me. We get absentee fathers who are more interested in hanging out in the bars and nightclubs than taking care of their children and spending quality time with their children. So when you move on to the next relationship, how do you integrate your children, especially boys, but even girls? How do you integrate those children into your relationships? You start dating someone. Sometimes before you know it, that person has moved in. Did you sit down and have a conversation with your children about, I'm now in a relationship with someone, they want to move into a household? How do you feel about that? Have they met the person? At what stage did they meet the person? How did you, as a mother, facilitate the bonding of this new partner with your child? What one-on-one time did they have with your child? I'm always shocked at parents who are getting married and getting engaged and starting a new family, and they have a child from a previous relationship, and the child was never even given the opportunity to really get to know this new person. And so you're setting your child up to have a failing relationship, sorry, with this individual. They don't even know the person. And then you guys have heard of the Oedipus complex. If you ever read Shakespearean literature, you know about this, where a young man, a young boy who's coming into he thinks manhood, is challenged by the men in his family. So even if he had a father figure, he naturally wants to challenge his father figure. You compound that when you bring in someone who wants to be a father figure from the outside of the family, and you have never done a good job of actually facilitating the proper building of that relationship. So you just throw them together and you hope it works, right? It's like going in the kitchen and just throwing ingredients in the pot and saying, well, hopefully these ingredients will make for a good chicken pot pie. You don't even know what you're throwing together. Tamika says, this abuse thing is bad. I went through it as a child. I don't really talk about it a lot. A lot of persons don't know, and I say things to my mother about it. And even when things happen, in her own eyes, she pretends not to know. And I left home living on my own from a very early age. Trust me when I tell you, and she puts this part in caps, you, my mother, hate me, do me a lot of bad things because of the one time I mentioned was things about it, even to the blessed day. Abuse mess up your peace of mind. Believe when I say. Now, my apologies, Tamika. I'm trying to see the rest of what you put here because it gets cut off in this. Give me 1 second here, Tamika, because I do want to try to read more of your comments. So it got cut off, but Tamika, my apologies. But here's Tamika saying to us that she has experienced abuse. And like most parents, when you try to talk to them, even as adults, about what you experienced as a child, what happened to you, they shut you down and they ignore you. And Tamika, I don't know your mother, but I would be willing to bet that she doesn't hate you. She just doesn't know any better. She doesn't know how to process what you're telling her. So denial is a very powerful thing. And a lot of us live in denial about so many different things. And we are all too happy to continue, even as adults, to deny what is obvious and what is in front of us, to deny what our children are saying. This has been my life experience. This is what has happened to me. Because listen, as parents, if we say, right, and acknowledge when our children say, this has happened to me, if we acknowledge that that is the case, that very acknowledgement in some part makes us feel like a failure. It is saying to, or we think anyway, that it is saying, I have failed as a parent. If you can say to me as a parent, I was abused, and then that parent has to acknowledge and accept that abuse, that means that, how am I to blame for this? I wasn't keeping a good eye on my child. I missed out on seeing that uncle who was always wanting to be there while I was working 2 or 3 jobs was molesting my child. Did I miss out on the stepfather who I was so desperate to have in my life and so desperate to be in a relationship with? was actually the real monster in our homes. So, Tamika, when it comes to our homes, we're asking a lot of parents to say, take some responsibility to what happened to your children. And for her to even accept that you were abused in whatever form would mean her accepting some of that blame. And she probably just cannot do that. So I don't know that she hates you. I would hate to think that any mother truly hates their child. I think that, again, we just grew up with a lot of dysfunctionality in our homes. Gisela says, I will sound sad and unreal, but there's a number of single parents, mostly mothers, that are worried about child support checks than nurturing their children's character, knowing very well that for any reason the home is broken, kids would be more prone to act out. Instead of understanding and even asking the children what is causing this change in their behavior, they just conform, and feel content with a psychological report to blame society or the absent parent instead of being active. And then I'm apologizing because the rest of yours got cut off as well. I think what is causing this change in their behavior? Sorry, give me 1 second. I think if I actually go into the Facebook chat, I might be able to see the full comments. I'm trying to see if it'll pull it up for me over here. All right, Gisela, I can't argue with the points that you've made. There's no two ways about it that a lot of our, okay, now I'm able to see more of your messages. There's no doubt that a lot of our social ills are by and large because parents are focused on money, having 3-4 jobs, having the big house, having this car, whatever, this outward appearance. We are trying to keep up with the Joneses so much so that we don't realize that the Joneses are a bunch of crackpots. They have psychological issues, they have mental issues, they're doing a horrible job raising their kids, et cetera, et cetera. So the Joneses is an outward facade, it's fake. The real dysfunction is there. Gisela, the rest of her comments said, being active and present in their life and reality, not the technology, as a nanny. Gisela, I cannot argue with anything that you've said. You make some good points. We have grown up in a society where we think that hiring a helper or a nanny means that somehow we call them nannies now because that's the politically correct thing, I guess, from our Western friends, European friends, whatever. And so we think that because we can afford a helper or a nanny to raise your children for us, that somehow says something good about us. In fact, it's one of the things that has really destroyed the very foundation of families in the Cayman Islands, because we have outside people raising our children, teaching our children their morals, their culture, and then we wonder why our children are into gangbanging and all this other stuff. It's like, you've not passed on, if you have any moral fiber or anything of that, if you know anything about your own culture, your Cayman culture, where have you passed it on to your children? You're not even there. So Gisela, let's be clear. Children cost money and you need resources to raise children. So that child support check might be a matter of putting food on the table for some people. For others, it could also be a matter of, oh, I need that child care check to get my nails done or to be able to go out clubbing over the weekend. So priorities do matter. But let's be frank here, money makes the world go round, and without it, you can do nothing. You will not get far. So even these absentee fathers who are going around putting their parts in women all over the island and getting every girl pregnant that they can, they have no careers, they're not successful people, they have no profession, no education, nothing. They can work minimum wage jobs because that is all they're qualified to do. So they can get a job at the local mini mart or whatever. I don't think we have a mini mart here, so that's why I just said that, right? Because I don't want to insult any businesses, but minimum wage jobs to try to support their families. And when you've got 5 or 6 kids out there that you've gone around having, I don't know how much support at a minimum wage job you can actually offer those children. So then you've created an environment where the mothers are struggling. They're having to go to NAU for help. And again, as parents, as mothers, we don't sit down and have conversations with our teenage girls. Listen, I'm not going to tell any young person to not have sex. I'm a realist, and I know what's happening in the real world. It would be wonderful if we all waited until we were emotionally ready, we were emotionally prepared, we were of age. But we know that doesn't happen. So having the sex talk with your children about why you don't want to jump in bed or behind the bushes, like we see some of our young people doing, with a young man, this is the frank discussion you need to have. But if you're going to engage in this behavior, we need to be safe about this, young ladies. Use your condoms. I don't care what he claims or what he says. Protect yourself. Still be on the birth control pill. Protect yourself from unwanted pregnancies, et cetera, because no matter what this man is telling you to get between your legs, at the end of the day, he's telling that to 5 other girls. He's running around there sowing his not so royal oats and getting girls pregnant left, right, and center. So you get pregnant by him, he's not going to be in a position to help you. Okay? So let's be smart here. You might make the mistake of sleeping with him, but do not compound that mistake and actually decide to get pregnant and bring a child into this world that now you have to be responsible for. I'm always so amazed at women who have children for men that can't help themselves, much less the woman or the child. And so now you have a child, and you have a child part 2 that's actually an adult man. And he ain't faithful. So you got to be chasing him all over the place, wanting to beat up other women for him, et cetera, et cetera. What kind of lifestyle are you creating for yourself and your family and your children when you make these sorts of poor decisions from the onset? Some of us are so desperate for a man that we are willing to fight to import no good men into this country as though we don't have enough of our own. Because listen, you can pick, choose, and refuse from the number of young, middle-aged, and older men who really are up to no good and do nothing to support their families. But we're not content with that. We will actually go out of our way to import them from overseas, knowing nothing about them. We don't know anything about their families overseas. They paint a certain picture to us. We can believe it. We don't know how many kids they really got back a yard or wherever it is that they're coming from. Sometimes back in the day, and they still do it, they'll have a family there and a family here. And so when they come here, even if they work in good job in construction industries, they're a roofer. And listen, construction men can make good money. They're having to spread it so thin and support so many children that at the end of the day, you're probably all the way down in the totem pole of the number of kids that they have to support. Sandy says, true thing, seen it working at school. And also my kids used to bring their friends for me to talk to about a lot of stuff. Be your child's friend, confidant. I defend them and discipline them at the same time. And you know, Sandy, you make an interesting point because a lot of parents always say, I'm not here to be your friend. Well, no, technically that isn't your job, but the two are not mutually exclusive. So in other words, they're not far apart. You can be a parent that believes in discipline, rules, boundaries, limitations, and still be a friend to your child. Why do you feel like you have to take on this disciplinarian hat that means that your children are even afraid to confide and to talk to you? Louis says, hey, top of the morning to you. Love the topic, dogs and human behaviors. Let's talk about it all the time. Listen, we are animals, and there are certain things I'm telling you. I don't know how much you guys have ever watched Caesar Milan, but If you go and listen to him, every single thing he says about dogs and training dogs, you can apply to people and human beings. Summer says consistency is crucial when disciplining. Summer, same thing Caesar would say about the dog. He's like, you can't start out 1 minute. Okay, puppy, sit. This is what we're going to do. And then 5 months later, you're going to do the same thing. Every single day, consistency, the same message. Same thing with children. No, you cannot do this. And here's the reason why. And every day, we're going to stick to that. We're not going to diverge from that. That's why children are going to test you. You got a mom and a dad, that child's going to run to mom because mom is the weaker link. Mommy, can I get chocolate? My daughter has a weakness for sweetness. Daddy already said no. So now she's coming to me because I got the same weakness. And I'm more likely to say yes. You got to be consistent. Daddy said no. I'm going to say no. We're on the same page. We're in this together. So Joshua is of the opinion that because parents have no right to hit a child, learn what's abuse before trying to kill your child, or they will end up killing you. Joshua, thank you for joining in on the conversation. I've not seen Joshua here before, so maybe this is your first time, but I thank you for the comment. And I think, Joshua, the bottom line is violence begets violence. You are violent towards your children, even in the name of good parenting and disciplining. You are teaching them violence, whether you know it or not. So I don't know what led to this young man stabbing up his stepfather this weekend. Like I said, we've had people contact us, his friends, who said that he lived in an abusive home and that the stepfather is known to hit him and punch him and whatever. I don't personally know the man. I've seen him around. I know where he works. And there are people, everybody's like, this is a nice guy. They can't even believe what people are saying. And I say, listen, I can't speak to what happens in people's homes. I have no idea. What I do know is when people don't know how to deal with what they now term a difficult child, or a child with emotional or psychological issues, they will resort to what has been done to them. Brutal force. Yes, I will hit you. I will slap you, because clearly there has to be a way for me to beat you into submission. We're going to continue having this dialogue because I see some of you talking about resources that are available. By the way, we were approached about doing a youth-based show here in Cayman Mall Road, trying to give our young people a voice. I want to thank Alric for having a dialogue with a young person in one of the groups that he's in. That young person expressed that, this was something they thought would work really well. And I met with them over the weekend. The idea has been passed on to me. We're seeing how we can best implement this. Let our young children come on Cayman Mall Road and talk to you all and tell you all what they're thinking, what they're going through, what they're experiencing. So that's going to be coming down the pipeline. Thank you for reminding us, I'm trying to remember who just said that, about the Boys to Men program. That's another great program at Pastor Murray. I'm going to talk to Pastor Murray. He's obviously a teacher and a pastor. I want to have him on our show so we can talk about it. Misha says, every single word you said is so true and important that every family and or individuals we need to put into practice. As adults, it's very important to have a little bit more understanding when it comes to our children and other people for that matter. It's hard, it's frustrating, it's exhausting. It is. And if you can't handle yourself or emotions, then that's a reminder for you to work on yourself first. Fix you, get help, exercise, and heal. Misha, I could not have said it any better. Misha goes on to say, love, in quotes, goes a long way to help heal, understand, and look out for each other. Communication is key. A lot of hatred and misunderstandings are caused due to lack of communication. My apologies. Right. You may love each other to bits, but if you don't understand what's in your heart, the other person will never know how deeply you care about them. Sue says, so true, exactly. Show them love, understand what is wrong. Bobby doesn't know what happened. So Bobby, over the weekend, a young man, maybe 18 years old, if that, stabbed his stepfather violently in their home. And then he went on social media. I'll share the link with you. He then went on social media and did an Instagram live. It didn't capture the actual stabbing, but he did share. I'll put the link here for you. He did share this video talking about in the aftermath of it, what happened. So the video actually showed the blood everywhere in the home. There was multiple videos that had come out of him live streaming. One of them showed when the police showed up. I think the police finally cut the live feed. And so this is the catalyst of this conversation this morning. I'm going to play a voice note here in a second from another parent who expressed over the weekend some of her thoughts about us rushing to judgment, about this young person being so incredibly troubled. Marlene says, hey, Sandy, please can you send birthday shout out to Miss Henberg Dixon, who will celebrate his 90th birthday on the 1st of July. Living in the Brat, former seaman, please and thanks, caregiver Marlene. Marlene, wow. Marlene, send us a little picture if you can, if you don't mind, if his family's okay with it, of Mr. Dixon. And we'll be more than happy to do that on the 1st on his birthday. Sylvia Wilkes says, good morning, Sandy. Violence is one of the issues our leadership and prevention summer camp addresses. I was troubled when I heard about the incident. I worked with this young man in the past, and our encounters with him in his early years was good. I admired his mother for her involvement. Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing that. And there's so much that can happen with children in their lives in such a short space of time. You know, what changed for this young man? Did he have a hard time going through puberty? Did he have a hard time accepting this stepfather into his life? How was that stepfather introduced? What has happened? You know, there's so many things that happen with families, like I said, step parents and bringing families together. I noticed that this family has a younger child. Has this young man felt like he doesn't get the attention or the love or whatever from his mother anymore, because now it goes to the husband and this younger child? But you'd be surprised how children react and take in certain bits and pieces of information. So Anne says, God gave us our children to rear. The help of nannies are great, but it should never exempt us from our God-given responsibilities. And I agree with you, Anne. And as much as possible, my husband and I have decided that we will not hire a nanny. You know, we will raise our daughter and she will spend the majority of her out of school time with us. We have a cleaner. She comes once a week. If it ever gets to the point where I need her twice a week, but her focus, cleaning, domestic stuff that I just don't have the time to really get to because I'm so busy. Yes, working, running my businesses, being active in my community, but my primary job is a parent. And if I fail at raising my own child, right, and doing the best possible job at that, what good does anything else that I do matter? You can't fail your family and fail your children and even be a good politician. That's why sometimes I look at these politicians, I laugh. I'm like, dude, you've got 6 children out there and you're not spending, you might give them money, but you're not spending any time with your children. You're not being present in their lives. You're not being there for them. You're trying to lead this country and put in place policies and all this other stuff. Save yourself first. Save those 6 children. That's going to have more of a lasting impact than anything else that you could possibly do in the world of politics. Yes, Sylvia, sex is another issue. So Sylvia is sharing a bit about her program. supporting caymanyouth.com. They do have a summer camp coming up. Please reach out to Sylvia. Sorry about that. Yes, I will reach out to you as well, and you can message us on WhatsApp, Sylvia, just in case I forget, because sometimes with all good intentions, I do forget to do these things. So let's listen to a voice note. Before we do that, I want to do a big shout out to our friends over at Miracle Brokers. They're one of our corporate sponsors. So let's just take a quick commercial break to hear what Miracle Brokers has going on.
Miracle Brokers is back. That's right. We're fully reopened and back to work. Our agents are here to serve you with all of your packing and shipping needs. Need to move? Don't worry. Give us a call today. Collect a package, shipping around the world, or straight to Cayman? You got it. Give us a call on 949-5989. Collection by personalized appointment only, where our dedicated agents are on standby to personally assist you. Don't forget to wear your mask, maintain social distancing, and one person per appointment. Check us out at miraclebrokers.com today.
All right, big shout out there to Miracle Brokers. Give them a call. They're the logistics specialist, shipping experts, the works. So I want you guys to listen to this. I think that this voice note is a cautionary tale on how we don't know what's going on in homes. But at the same time, even the people who say, don't rush to judgment, you don't know what's going on in homes, they themselves don't know what's going on in homes. And people are talking. That's what people do. So this young man has talked to his friends. That is obvious. He has alleged abuse. And it's not just that night. It's not just this incident. So listen to your children, parents. Listen to your children. They are in dire need of anyone who wants to pay them attention. As a parent, that is in our best interest because we do care about our children, to pay attention to what they have to say, as opposed to making somebody else pay attention. A few messages are coming in on the WhatsApp, so let me just take a moment now to read some of those. Okay, so someone wants to talk to me about something. Another person says, morning, Sandra. Sorry. Loving the show, the live show. I got kicked off of Facebook again, so watching it on YouTube. Oh my gosh. Don't forget, you can also watch it on the website. So if YouTube kicks you off, go to the website under live show. The link is at the top. Important points about children's welfare you're raising and the established culture of corporal punishment here. I never thought of it that way. Links between corporal punishment and slavery. Really? Interesting. Yes, I'm surprised actually that particular person, because he is very engaged in a lot of conversations at different levels. But I'm glad that we have gotten you to think a little bit this morning about some alternative ways of looking at it. Yes, that's why, I mean, listen, African American families are entrenched in the disciplining of our children. Why do you think that is? Because we have a 500 plus year history of being beaten into submission. Well, it goes way before that. From the times of the Egyptians, you submit to someone physically. You break a person's mind by physical control. You beat people into submitting to you. That's how you ultimately break them emotionally and psychologically. And so when you're beating your children physically and you don't get the connection that has for their emotional and psychological well-being, when you read report after report that you're willing to dismiss, no, beating doesn't harm anybody. Look at me. I was beaten. Nothing wrong with me. Are you sure? How many of us are dysfunctional? Let's be honest. suffering from depression, psychological issues, bipolarism, all sorts of things, disconnectedness from our families, feelings of abandonment, anxiety, all of these things. We have to drink our problems away. We have to smoke our problems away with ganja, marijuana, whatever the situation is. And yet, we continue to say that there is nothing wrong with us and we are fine and we have been beaten, but we're okay. That's our determination. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever met anyone that was actually beaten or has psychological issues, and that person actually knew or willingly admitted to their psychological issues? Most people who have issues don't know that they have issues, They feel like they're perfectly A-okay. So give me 1 second here. This voice note that I'm trying to pull in, it's saying that it's too big for, that it's actually too big for our live stream here. So there are some limitations, I'm aware, of what we can pull in. So what that means is I'm going to have to add it to YouTube and then share it from YouTube, I think. All right, give me 1 quick second here so that I can get this up and running. So these are some of the challenges that we face as families. And so the first step is talking about it and being honest about our struggles and what we are all facing. I think that's the first step to all of this. And it's through the dialogue and the discourse that we can begin to have some level of understanding of where do we go from here, what resources are available to us, how do we get help. I thank people like Sylvia Wilkes, who works with troubled youth, like Pastor Murray, who has his Boys to Men program, because all of these programs, even if that program only reaches 20 young men in some capacity, that is 20 less young men that could potentially end up as inmates at Northwood, being dead in our streets from gun violence and so on. Giselle says, from experience, our system is reactive and not proactive. It fails when it comes to protecting children. And we see that every single day. Anne says, more than we'd like to admit, sadly, in terms of those of us who are actually dysfunctional, but we think we're okay. It gives me a heavy heart having to have these sorts of discussions, but this is what we need to do. We need to have them. We need to, as parents, admit to our own shortcomings, our own failures. We need to talk about how I came from a dysfunctional home. I'm going to admit to that. The only way that people can relate to you, even when you're talking to young people, is if you are willing to be honest. There are a lot of us who can't be honest, won't be honest, because again, we're ashamed. Who wants to admit, right, that their family are dysfunctional, that they were the product of an abusive environment, that they have people who suffer from a lot of psychological issues? Someone sent me a private message saying that they've done this positive discipline 8-week workshop via Zoom during COVID, and they said no doubt it would be great for them to advertise more. Seems like the government can pay thousands of dollars to promote the port and to pay a woman beater salary, but to not promote family support. And to that person who privately sent through that message, trust me, there is a reason why those of us who know about these persons in the Legislative Assembly who sit down and abuse people in their own households, who sit down and, quite frankly, are horrible fathers. They hang out in the bars picking at women more than they spend time at home, despite having the money, making $12,000 a month, despite being leaders in their community. They're not leaders in their own household. They're not leaders in their own families. So can they really have a conversation with us? We sit down, look at them, we're like, oh, well, you're a hypocrite. But they should still try. That's their job as politicians and as community leaders. I'm sitting here saying to you guys, I'm not talking about perfection. I'm not saying that I have had a perfect life, far from it. If I sat down and told you guys some of the shit that I have gone through in my life, you'd be like, WTF. And so I know the struggles, not in a theoretical sense. I know them because I have lived them myself. So I know what I'm talking about. When I sit down with young people, I often have to beg them, try to listen to what I'm saying to you. If you find someone who's willing to give you good advice, just because they want you to do better, they want you to be a better person, take that advice and run with it. Because there'll be so many people that just don't care. They don't have enough time to care. They're too wrapped up in their own issues, whatever. You know, our young people don't have the benefit of having lived their lives yet. They're not 30, 40, and as we continue, we learn and we grow. They're not there, and that's why they need the guidance of not just their immediate family, but the entire community as a whole. And if you see a young person doing something wrong, they may not be your child. They're not your direct responsibility. But I beseech you to reach out to them. A kind word might be something that they need to hear in that moment. A corrective word. Young man, you really shouldn't be doing that. Let them know that what they're doing, even on a societal level, is irresponsible and wrong. Miss Ann says, you know, Miss Sandy, as parents, we must ask our children for forgiveness from time to time. This is why communication is so important. I've had to many times, and because we're not perfect and we don't always get it right, you have to try really hard. It's a daily struggle, but it's worth it. And that lesson, Anne, of forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, is so important. We could do a whole other show on the importance of that and how to effectively heal bridges by just saying, please forgive me. I'm sorry. All right. I want you guys to listen to this. We're almost out of time. We're pretty much out of time this morning. But I want you guys to listen to this voice note that was circulated over the weekend. So we've merely put a voice note of the young man in question. Obviously, he decided to put this out there, live stream it. He had a lot of his, fellow friends watching the live stream. It was captured by tons of people. I don't even think Instagram has removed it. To the best of my knowledge, Instagram has left it up. And it's still very much on his social media platform. So have a look at this, folks. He's obviously been arrested. I understand that the condition of his stepfather was serious. There were initial reports that he had succumbed to his injuries, but that does not appear to be the case. And we're certainly wishing him a full recovery, but most importantly, we're wishing the family some healing. So I want you guys to listen to this voice note, and then we'll come back and wrap up our comments after that. So give me one quick second here so that I can pull this up. Here we go.
Before you guys start to speculate, please find out the facts where the situation is concerned and how it really go. Because my daughter went to school with this young boy, and I know this young boy personally, and I know this young boy have anger problems and some mental problems. Find out how much times his mother be crying at work down in the back, praying for him and that he would change and stuff. Talk about the little girl he tried to rape down in Northward, and to talk about the little girl he tried to rape down in Prospect, and to talk about how bad he's been in school, the whole high school, and they had to put him in AC unit. Talk about how he be picking fights and he gets stabbed up at 14. Couple months afterwards, he go steal motorbike, crash it, and lose his leg. Listen, I don't know the facts on everything, but I do know his stepfather and I do know his mother, and they are good parents. This child just has issues and problems. And what happened with us as parents when our kids do wrong or we see problems before we try address it and get help, we want to take and we want to cover it up because we don't want the public to know that we have a child that's have behavior issues, we have a child that have mental issues. How many people here on island have mental children and stuff, and you don't even see them out in public anywhere with them? They just lock up home and stuff. Please find out the facts first before you guys start taking up for him and giving him right where everything is concerned. I know this child personally, and I know the things he go on with. Ask any of the teenagers that really know him. Ask all the teenagers that was at my daughter party last night when they were talking, that they say that, you know, they don't know what's wrong with him, why he don't stop with what he's going on with, how his parents have tried, well, stepfather and mother. Please, people talk too much and I really don't know the fact. Now, I've stayed out of this group chat the whole time and haven't had anything to say, but I don't live in the household. I can't say that whether it's true he's been abused or not by his stepfather. I personally, for one, do not believe it. Talk about his little sister at 15 years old that gone out there and get pregnant and stuff. And none of you know what the stepfather has been going through with these two little children. None of you have to sit down and hear your children coming home from school. Oh, mommy, you know they how they carry on in school. Mommy, you know what they do, this and that. They so rude and she's so young and she out there having sex and all kind of stuff. I used to have to hear my son come home at 13 and 14 talking and saying. I used to have to hear my daughter and stuff saying, listen, find on the facts out first. That's all I'm asking. Please find on the facts. I'm not taking up for anybody, but find on the facts. Because like I said, if you know these two little children, and especially this boy in particular, like how I know him, then on a situation would be different when I'm making on the comments.
All right, folks. Some real insight, I think, from another parent who is commenting on the situation, admitting that she doesn't know everything. And at the same time, you have to understand, if you have two children that have grown up in an environment, grown up in a home, and both of them are exhibiting social issues. One child getting pregnant early, out there having promiscuous sex, da 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 da. Another child, admittedly as a teenager, stealing, getting into all sorts of trouble. What has happened? How can you grow up in a home with good parents and have the two emergent children out of that household having such serious issues? How does that happen? How honest are we being as parents about what's happening in our households? You can be a good person and a horrible parent. You could be a good employee. You work hard and you just don't have the skills to be a good parent. Avail yourself, folks, of what is available to you. Learn from day one when you bring that child into this world. Even before you bring them into this world, I'm begging us as Caymanian people, make a conscious decision to prepare yourself. It's not enough to be like, well, I just want to have a home or I want to be able to afford certain things for my children. No, I want to be able to afford to give them a safe, loving environment with a structure that will mold them in a particular way. If I am uneducated, I'm working a minimum wage job that only pays $6, $7 an hour, and I've got to work in excess of 100 hours a week or whatever to just make ends meet. How well prepared will I be to be able to find the time even in my schedule to spend with my children? This situation with children who leash out on their parents, their family members, their household, this doesn't happen overnight. This is something that has been brewing from day one. Even before is the point that I'm trying to make. Because as parents, we are ill-equipped ourselves. We are not dealing with our own psychological, emotional issues. And despite us being good people, we're not dealing with it. We're setting ourselves up so that when we have children, we have to struggle so hard just to make ends meet in one of the most expensive places in the world. And so we have no time for our children to even be there for them, to listen to them, to open up the lines of communication, to discipline them from day one. And we do that to the detriment and the peril of our Caymanian families. This is why we are struggling so much. So I think I'm going to end the conversation there for today. This isn't a one-off conversation, folks. This isn't something that after today, we're all going to be great parents. After today, we're going to be like, we have all the answers. We're going to know what to do. We're good. This is a struggle. We will continue on this journey. I'm a new parent. I'm new to this. I find it challenging to judge parents because I don't know what you've been through. But at the same time, as a child who has grown up in an extremely dysfunctional home and dysfunctional environment, I can tell you with 100% certainty that 99% of the children out there who are having issues, you can tie it directly back to poor parenting. I'm not asking you, and I'm not trying to blame parents. I'm telling you the facts from my own personal experience and what I have observed and seen in our communities. Parenting is our number one issue in this country. It leads to criminality. It leads to all sorts of social issues. I have seen parents. There's one example that I'm thinking of right now. The mom seemed to have had some sort of issues of her own. And she married this Asian individual, bringing in certain factors into the Caribbean culture. And we even have to understand how cultures intermingle and how they work. Right? So people bring their cultural uniqueness with them. And in the Asian cultures, there's certain things that are done and maybe seen as appropriate that in the Caribbean culture that just doesn't work. And so there was a constant strife in the household between the parents and even how they were going to raise their children. That strife transcended on the children. So they had two children, a boy and a girl. The girl was the eldest by quite a number of years. Smart young lady, did well in school, had so much potential. But in her teenage years, she started to have issues. The manner in which the father was treating her, she would reach out and be like, I'm in the bathroom trying to do certain things, trying to shower, whatever, and my father thinks he can sit there and watch me. Because maybe that's what they do where he's coming from. I don't know. But that's an issue. It made her uncomfortable. It made her, start to rebel and to act out. And, the mom doesn't quite get it. He controls the mother because, again, culturally, that's acceptable to have such a level of control that you have no freedoms whatsoever. This child was so desperate to get out of that household. She ends up starting to have sex young. She's a smart kid, did well in school, had all the earmarks of you could go off to university and have a really successful life or do whatever you want. Community college, trade school, whatever it is that you want to do. What ended up happening? Got pregnant, felt like societal pressure. She had to marry the guy, got pregnant again. Not even 25 and already have 2 kids under your belt. Despite being so smart, working in fast food because you got to support the family, working another job at the bank, all minimum wage, trying to make ends meet, got to hire a helper to sit there with your kids all day. The helper don't care. The helper comes from an impoverished background themselves. They have their own mouths back home that they're trying to feed. They're just there to make sure your child doesn't die. Anything happens, they can't even, most of them, provide CPR. They're not doing anything educational with your children. They're not reading with their children. You're investing money in paying a helper, or as we like to fancily say, a nanny. That person can't even read. They can't do anything with your child except babysit. So let's call them what they are. They're a babysitter. And so that's of no real benefit to you, except you're able to take the time away from your own child. And if you think that that's the biggest benefit of having a nanny, a helper, a babysitter, think again. That's to your detriment, and more importantly, it's to the detriment of your own children. One thing leads to the next. It's a chain reaction. So whatever happened this weekend, as the last person said in that voice note, it didn't just start with this weekend. This has been a long issue with these children. And they've had, obviously, based on the people that know the parents and know a lot of what's being said about the children, they obviously have issues. But where does that stem from? A teenager just doesn't start acting like that for no reason whatsoever. It's hard as a parent to look at ourselves under the magnifying glass and say, I need to take some responsibility for this. I'm a good person, but I have failed my children. What did I do wrong? Did they have emotional and psychological issues that I didn't address at the earliest stage? Did I wait too long? What went on here? Those are the questions that we need to be asking as we examine what has happened. Young people, you're out there struggling. You have got to find someone to help you. Reach out to whoever will throw you a lifeline. I'm telling you, there are people who do care. And there are people who will try to put you in contact with the professionals that you need. At the end of the day, if you do not do that, you are in part contributing to your own failures in life. Because when you become a teenager, you're no longer a kid. The world is going to start to judge you. The world is going to say, you're accountable for your behavior. No matter what the contributing factors were, now you get to make choices. Growing up in the most dysfunctional home, you're expected as a teenager and as an adult to somehow know how to fix yourself, which I know sounds crazy. And you may not know how to do these things, but there are resources out there. There's help out there. And your friends who are contacting you on Instagram and on your live feed and encouraging you to do all these things and bigging you up about free up boss man, this and that, those friends are idiots. Let me be very frank with you. Any young people who are listening to this show, this program, your friends are a bunch of idiots. They have no more experience than you at life. They don't know what they're talking about. They will end up in Northwood being your cellmate or worse. And so they're not the people that you want to listen to for any degree of guidance whatsoever. They do not have your best interest at heart. Thank you so much. Anne says kudos to the single moms out there who are trying their best to get it right, as well as the great stepfathers who honestly and genuinely step up to the plate of fathering another man's responsibility. Absolutely, Anne. Janet says, happy anniversary, CMR. Good topic. Thank you, Miss Janet. Happy anniversary from Anne as well. So thank you guys so much. So as you know, today is our anniversary, folks. 3 years. And what a ride it has been, right? Over 40,000, 42,000, I think, followers between Instagram and our Facebook platform. We have come in with all guns blazing and really shook things up in the world of media. We're not your traditional media house in the Cayman Islands. We're in the content creation space. We wanted to take something that was very traditional, the Mall Road, bring it into the 21st century and make it our own. We're doing a supplement booklet. So for those of you who have small businesses and want to get involved in that, the cutoff date is pretty much today, early tomorrow. We're going to be having our designers work on that. So it's not too late. Send in your artwork, send in your articles, whatever. Get on it. But we will definitely continue on this journey. You know, you might not like everything that Cayman Mall Road has done or said or whatever, but we are here to stay. And I dare say that we have changed the landscape of what people expect from media, of the interaction and participation that people have when it comes to media relations. So tomorrow we will be talking about all of these things relating to our anniversary, but technically the anniversary is actually today. So Gucci Boy, 2020 Hype says happy anniversary. Thank you so much. Lisa says happy anniversary from Cayman Brac. Yes, big shout out to our Cayman Bracers and everyone in Little Cayman. We know that they often tune into the program and really, really enjoy it. You know, I want to encourage everyone. We, like I said, are going to be doing a little promotion here shortly about doing a youth-focused show where it's the young people who will have their voice. And that's one way in which we can help. And so we are going to do that. My phone is ringing off the hook. You know, that means that it's work time, folks. Lots of people calling me. So I've got to get on it. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day. Please be blessed, and we'll be back here tomorrow evening. We don't know yet what time the press conference will be, but as soon as I find out, I will certainly advise and let you guys know. So happy anniversary to CMR. We're here for it. If you're interested in advertising our booklet, there's some quick rates available to you. Give us a shout out because we have such a large platform. We're more than happy to promote your businesses. You know, obviously we've got to charge something. So we have what we consider the most reasonable rates in the industry. And again, thank you guys for tuning in this morning. I know it was a hard discussion to have, but we needed to have it. And we will continue to have it because here on Cayman Mall Road, we do not shy away from any discussion, to be quite frank. We're gonna do it. Big shout out to Miracle Brokers, Popeyes, Burger King. Those are some of our corporate sponsors who make it possible for us to have these conversations. We're going to be talking about young people and their mental health issues. I'm going to reach out to the Family Resource Center to see how we can collaborate and reach you through this platform, because I know you guys will tune in. A lot of you are silently watching and learning, and that is key. We can all teach each other and do better at this. So I'll leave you with a few quick notes here before signing off, and I'll see you guys in the morning once again here on The Cold Hard Truth.
Miracle Brokers is back. That's right. We're fully reopened and back to work. Our agents are here to serve you with all of your packing and shipping needs. Need to move? Don't worry. Give us a call today. Collect a package, shipping around the world, or straight to Cayman? You got it. Give us a call on 949-5989. Collection by personalized appointment only, where our dedicated agents are on standby to personally assist you. Don't forget to wear your mask, maintain social distancing, and one person per appointment. Check us out at miraclebrokers.com today. You're now tuned in to the Cold Hard Truth. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.